When we think about the holiday season, we picture these cozy family gatherings, twinkling lights, a jolly man in a red suit. It all feels so ancient, so timeless, right? Almost sacred. But what if I told you that its real story is actually one of controversy, bitter conflict, and a really brilliant act of invention? Yeah, what if I told you that the entire American holiday season as we know it, I'm talking the tree, the big gift-giving moment, even Santa Claus himself, wasn't some ancient tradition passed down through the ages, but was actually a deliberate invention born out of a crisis right in 19th century New York City. I mean, the contrast between the myth and the reality is pretty shocking. We think of the holiday as this timeless, sacred thing, but the truth? It's surprisingly modern, it's largely secular, and it was once so controversial that it was actually banned in parts of America. So let's dig into how that all happened. To really get how New York invented the holiday we know today, we first have to understand why it was so controversial in the first place. And trust me, this isn't some recent debate. This was the original war on Christmas, and it goes back for centuries. It really all kicked off with the Protestant Reformation. For reformers like John Calvin, Christmas just wasn't a biblical holiday. They saw it as a papist, a Catholic invention, filled with all these rituals they were trying to get rid of. This wasn't just some dry theological debate, it was a full-blown cultural battle. And that whole European conflict landed right here in early America, especially in a place as diverse as New York. On one side, you had the Anglicans. They loved a big, lavish Christmas party. But then you had groups like the Puritans and the Presbyterians who flat out forbade it. And then kind of in the middle, you had the Dutch, who were doing their own thing, celebrating St. Nicholas's Day on December 6th. The city was completely, and I mean completely, divided on the issue. So, what do you do? How do you unify a city that's literally at war with itself over a holiday? Well, New York's elite came up with a pretty radical solution. If you can't agree on the old holiday, invent a new one that everyone can celebrate together. And this incredible invention wasn't the work of some government committee. Nope, it was the brainchild of three creative New Yorkers. You had a poet, a storyteller, and an artist. And together, these three guys would take a divisive religious flashpoint and transform it into a secular American festival, all about family and fun. So first up, we've got the poet, Clement Clarke Moore. His famous 1823 poem, you probably know it as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," did something absolutely brilliant. He basically took the beloved Dutch tradition of Santa Claus giving gifts on December 6th, and he just moved the whole operation to the night of December 24th. Just like that, he merged two totally separate holidays into one. Now, at the very same time, the famous writer Washington Irving was busy creating a whole new mythology for Christmas. He wrote these wonderful, nostalgic stories that stripped out all the controversial religious stuff and reframed the holiday as this charming, wholesome, family-centered event. And suddenly, even the most strict anti-Christmas Protestants could look at that and say, okay, you know what? I can get on board with this. But to really seal the deal, to make the holiday truly secular and for everybody, they needed a new symbol. They needed a figurehead who belonged to everyone, not just one religious group. They needed to invent Santa Claus. And the invention of Santa was really a four-step process. First, you start with the Dutch Santa Claus, who is a religious bishop. Then Moore's palm comes along and turns him into a jolly old elf with a sleigh and reindeer. Step 3, during the Civil War, the artist Thomas Nast starts drawing him as a patriotic symbol for the Union Army. And then finally, after the war, Nast completes the transformation. He gives him the red suit, the grandfatherly warmth, even a wife. The religious saint was totally gone, replaced by a completely secular, all-American icon. Okay, so with a unifying figurehead like Santa and this new family-friendly vibe, the stage was set. This reinvented Christmas was about to explode into the massive commercial and cultural giant that we now call the holiday season. And New York City was the engine driving it all. Toy stores like FAO Schwarz started calling themselves Santa's headquarters. The city hosted the very first National Toy Fair back in 1903, making it the capital of the industry. And of course, iconic traditions like the Rockefeller Center tree just cemented the city as the holiday's absolute epicenter. The commercial power was just immense. I mean, just look at that number. By 2014, driven almost entirely by this one season, annual toy sales in the U.S. hit $23 billion. The holiday had become, as one writer put it, the absolute cash cow for corporate America. But the success of this new holiday also created this incredible social pressure. This headline from a 1904 newspaper says it all. Jews keep Christmas. Children demand it, and that settles it. The new secular Christmas was so powerful that it started pulling in communities that had never celebrated it before, which, created a whole new challenge. So, how did other traditions adapt? Well, it was basically a two-step process. First, a lot of Jewish families started to participate in Christmas, but as a secular American national holiday, like the 4th of July. But then, to create a cultural counterweight, they also began to elevate the relatively minor festival of Hanukkah, turning it into a major celebration with new traditions like big-time gift-giving. And that's how Christmas slowly morphed into the much broader holiday season. Now, this uniquely American invention didn't just stay in America. Oh no, it went global. But now, here in the 21st century, it's facing a whole new set of challenges. During the 20th century, which people often call the American century, U.S. cultural influence was just at its absolute peak. And one of its biggest exports? You guessed it, this New York-invented holiday season. It spread all over the planet, becoming the world's very first truly global holiday. But today, we're living in a pretty different era. There's this theory from the political scientist Samuel Huntington, who argued that the great conflicts of our time wouldn't be about ideology, but about culture and religion, what he called a clash of civilizations. And that puts a secular global holiday in a very tricky spot. So that really leaves us with two possible futures. On one hand, does the unifying secular idea of happy holidays just keep spreading, becoming a tradition for our globalized world? Or, in an age of rising cultural conflict, does the whole season splinter back into separate religious holidays, sparking a new war on Christmas, but this time on a global scale? Think about it. The holiday season was created to solve a problem of division. So the final question really is, can this great American invention, which was designed for unity, actually survive in a world that seems to be pulling apart more and more? Will it be undone, or will it find a new way to adapt all over again?